feels like a half step, right? They just switched around. What interval is that? This is our diminished fifth or tritone. We'll call it a tritone. Do we ever play tritones on string instruments? All the time, all the time. Even not just as a double stop, but in arpeggiated sections or scale passages. This is something that we have to really pay attention to. Tritones feel like a half step. Let's do our major second intervals. Whole step. If we expand it, low finger, low string, high finger, high string, this is now a major sixth, right? Feels like a whole step. We turn it upside down, low finger on a high string, high finger on a low string. What interval is that? Sounds like a perfect fourth, right? Here's our major second, whole step. Major sixth, by switching back upside down, it's now a perfect fourth. Now what's the usefulness of all this stuff? Well, if I'm learning an arpeggio, I know that major sixth on top is going to feel like a whole step. If I can think about that interval relationship, it's much easier to get in tune than just to think finger, 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 finger. Or there's a perfect fourth. It feels like a whole step that way. Okay? Let's do the others really quick. Is this totally weird, confusing? I see some white
This is
ones.
wonderful. This is a brand new thought to me. I love it. I mean, I've done whole step and half step across the string, but I've never thought of it. I've never translated it to the intervals.
Right.
So that's cool.
So the idea is that we're feeling all of these feel like a half step, right? They all have the same feeling in our hand. All of these feel like a whole step. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do the others. This is where it gets fun. A little complicated. Minor third, this would be like E up to G or a step and a half. If we expand that on two strings, what interval do we create? This is a minor seventh. So if we have some arpeggio with a minor seventh, we can know, oh, that feels like a minor third. It feels like a step and a half. Or if we do it upside down, what do we have? A major third. Whew, this is where it gets a little confusing. When we play a major third across strings, or even a double stop, it sounds happy, it sounds major, right? What does it feel like in my hand? It feels minor. It's backwards. It feels small. And with my students, I will call this a small third, rather than a minor third, because it's not a minor third, it's a major third. But it feels like a small third. Okay, make sense? Next one, this would be a major seventh, right? This one would be a minor third. This is if I'm using G sharp. It's a minor third, but it feels big in my hand. It's two whole steps. This becomes very important in advanced technique when we're doing passages of thirds. That kind of thing. I have to know which ones are big and which ones are small. This is small because it's a minor third. That's big because it's a major, or excuse me, backwards. Major third, small. Minor third, big. Big, small, small, big. Big, small. That's the pattern, so that I know where those half steps are. So thinking small third, big third. Okay, the last one. Perfect fourth. That's a pretty easy interval, right? Just 1 to 4. If we expand it on two strings, all of a sudden we have an octave. We can play octaves in tune. We can play fourths in tune. Theoretically, right?
Right.
Okay. If we do it backwards, what interval do we have? Major second, whole step. But we're playing it with, 1 and 4, right? Same fingering as that one. For the next one, this would be an augmented fourth. This would be an augmented eighth or a minor ninth. Either way. And then this is a half step. Do we commonly play that interval? Is that an interval we play very often? Augmented fourth?
I haven't seen that one much personally.
You play it all the time. in scales. Think about a second finger scale for a second. Say we're starting on C on the violin, F on the viola. That's a half step. How big is the interval between 1 and 4? It's an augmented fourth. It's big. It's not just a perfect fourth anymore, it's got a stretch to it. Or if we're doing the key of B flat major, and I'm going from, and I play A with the fourth finger and I have to stretch back to 1, that's an augmented fourth. It's an interval we play constantly. We don't often play this interval, right? That isn't very practical. But sometimes we do. Sometimes you see that in 20th century music. Beautiful sound.
So,
Any questions?
a student who's had lessons for a year or two, I mean, when do you start
Yeah.
approaching these concepts, and how do you, do you use that terminology from the?
Well, to outline it like this, I would not do for a long time because this is a pretty scientific approach, like kind of catalog everything. But I start doing half steps and whole steps and how they relate to tritones and sixths immediately. So you can do this with beginning students in book 1. This is thinking about half step relationships. Thirds are probably the next level of complexity because they're a little bit harder to measure perfectly. You know, they're a little farther away, a little more ambiguous. And these are actually not too bad. We usually know where fourth finger goes. It usually goes in one place. It's the outside of our framework as well. I think these are the trickiest, honestly. So the whole point is, we can take complexity in music and boil it down to interval relationships. And I've got a handout actually you can take with you. Once we put it all on the board, this might actually make sense. We can get this little chart. So on the left side, you see, see where it says feel on the left side? Those are the intervals we feel. And there's only 6 of them. Half step, whole step, small third, big third, fourth, harmony, fourth. And then these are all the intervals we create orally with that feeling. Either a melodic minor second on one string, or if we're bridging 2 strings, we get those others. Any questions about that? Okay. Well, it's been fun to be with you today.
Oh, can we please just talk about the fourth finger one more minute?
Oh, sure.
You know, he's shorter than everybody else.
Poor little guy.
Is that just getting the students' position right all around here? Because is part of it strengthening that? I started having students plucking with the fourth finger, start strengthening through here.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a toning that has to happen to get that finger to be more strong. But it's kind of individual to the student. I'll just tell you everything I do and know. In the beginning stages, I will have them do some left-hand pizzicato, just on open strings. It's like a game, like a mimicking game. And then, when it's time for them to learn fourth finger, I will just have them practice tapping. And I'll have them tap it right next to the third finger. So the whole point of these things is to try to encourage a beautifully curved position as much as we can with that fourth finger. Now that's not going to necessarily stay that way all the time, and it doesn't have to be exactly curved like the other fingers, but it's just trying to get that as the ideal. And then we can expand it out to get a little bit more of a stretch. The things that it kind of can help the fourth finger are a thumb position, especially if it's a small hand. If the thumb is really far back, it makes it much harder stretch for the fourth finger. If we bring the thumb a little bit more central, maybe across from 1 or low 2, it tends to give the fourth finger a little bit more support. Wrist position can also be an issue. If the wrist is stuck out too far, it's really hard to get that fourth finger to work. Bringing it in a little closer can allow it to be a little bit more curved. But I'm convinced that part of our problem is we avoid using it so much that it never gets strong. You know what I mean? You know, if we were to just practice, and not to the point of hurting ourselves, but just practice some,
So that it gets
some tapping so that we get used to it. Now, one thing, just this is for me, because I tend to give myself a complex about things sometimes. The fourth finger will never look exactly like the other fingers because he is short and he has to stretch the farthest. The angle at which he approaches the strings is going to be very different than the first finger. First finger, the fingernail's almost straight up the string. Picture that.
Mm-hmm.
With the fourth finger, the fingernail is almost perpendicular to the string. It's pointing straight sideways. So that the angle is going to be very different. And that's okay. We just have to kind of be aware of that. It's not going to be here. And we might not necessarily want to put it exactly right on the tip either because there's not a lot of flesh on the end of that little finger. So I have to think in my mind, put it a little bit more on the pad, which will give it more of the strength of the other fingers, even if it's not as curved as the others, to give it just a little bit more comfort and strength. My fourth finger doesn't look as good as a lot of other people's fingers, but it feels good. So I guess that's all that matters, right?
Have you had anybody get that joint stuck that's really bothersome? How do you overcome that?
Well, for some, I don't know if you can ever fix it, honestly.
Just deal with it.
But what we can do is try to get it to feel relaxed, even if it kind of just plops down in a certain place that we can't actually control. You know, because sometimes we'll have super elasticity in that joint, and it will kind of lock down, and this one will be curved. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That may not necessarily be an evil thing.
Okay.
As long as the finger itself feels relaxed and strong. I do believe, though, to a certain extent, we can train the finger to keep in a curved position. Maybe it's just practicing this
Okay.
for a while. It's the same idea with our bow. If we don't have those muscles toned, and it's not about building muscle, it's about training our muscles, it's about making our muscles smarter, then it's very easy for this to either collapse this way with the pinky, right, or that way with the pinky when we're holding our bow. And it's not that it's not possible to get it to go, it's just that it needs a little bit of extra care and training, maybe just doing some real careful things and very slowly building over time. And I think it's possible to do that with the pinky as well. Just one other thought about pinkies, and then I'm going to ask Lisa because she's had a lot of experience with this too. I find that if I can get a student to use their pinky in a really healthy way when they're really young, it usually stays with them longer term. If I avoid using the pinky and say, oh, we'll work on that later, or we'll wait till book 3, then it becomes an exception to our regular position. It becomes hard all of a sudden. But if we make it not hard from the beginning and just have them use it, have it be curved and relaxed, usually they can remember that feeling and build. Now, of course, as they grow, things change as they grow. I don't know, hands get weird when kids grow. I don't know. they just do. That's why I love working with these little 6-year-olds, because their hands are just chubby, perfectly round. But yeah, any thoughts about fourth finger, Lisa?
Yeah, I think building the, and I don't know, I think it's okay to say strength, building strength, because I find a lot of students that have troubles, I don't know, were you talking about locking fingers? That is with both, and I get it with bow hands as well. Mm-hmm. I find that if you can get them to do some exercises and build that strength, that they lock much less frequently. I find it happens more with violists because their fourth finger, I'm really glad you said that you just have to be okay with your fourth finger being more extended, and in some cases with those violists, especially, they're over on the lower strings, but even on the A string, they have to reach so high that this middle knuckle just gets locked. And if they can just do more of those exercises and just build a little bit of joint tone, I don't know, I need to take an anatomy class so I always feel like I'm using the wrong terminology, but that helps a lot. But I find that most of my students can if not completely overcome it, at least improve it, and have much more flexibility if they just use them more. But those exercises, the plucking, I can't remember who said that. That's a really great idea. I always do that, and I think that helps a lot. So, and even, I mean, I think that's just a good way to approach releasing of your fingers in general, thinking of more of that left hand pizzicato, because when they lift the pinky this way, that's when it gets locked. If they can think of more of a release, a left hand pizzicato release with the pinky, I find that they're more instantly relaxed rather than lifting, lock, and now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one other thought.
Yeah.
Being aware of what the pinky is doing when the other fingers are down is also important. I find that sometimes kids get a habit of doing things like this, or when they lift the pinky, it kind of hand position out of whack as well. Just trying to get it in a position where it's sort of in a ready position. When they put the third finger down, pinky's ready to go. Sometimes just to get it to stay there takes practice and training. But that can also help to strengthen just the overall framework of being curved and relaxed and ready to go. So avoiding this.
So while you're talking about frame right there, so do you keep the thumb as a point of reference with this always? Because you mentioned a minute ago, make sure it's not doing this, but sometimes let it come up. Because is it okay to let it come up to help the fourth finger, or do we lose our frame?
This is kind of a tricky balance. I think the principle is the framework needs to be consistent. So for any given student, we need to find sort of the home position for the thumb. And I would start with going across from the first finger on violin, unless they have puny hands, and then maybe think of coming up a little bit higher. But it kind of depends on what their hand position is when all four
And so
fingers are down.
just look what it looks like when they
Right.
play 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right.
and what does it need to be?
Exactly, and then in general,
And
we
then
really
if you
don't
have
want
to do
that
a
to
low
move.
one,
Right, for that one, we're just expanding the hand.
which, okay, you
So
can
I'm
do
just-
easy
I'm-
even if your
I'm-
thumb's up, okay.
I'm forcing the stretch to happen in the first finger rather than moving my hand frame to accommodate that. Yeah, because the first finger is a lot longer than the four, and he has more potential to curve and kind of curl, and the fourth finger has potential to stretch this way. So expanding this way.
So if a student is not having, if the student is having the thumb up higher than the first finger, how do you point that out to them? That's their point of reference for their home frame, or whatever you want to call it?
Right, but you want to be a little careful, because sometimes they really won't know what that is unless they really are playing all four fingers a lot. And that's where they really need to find that home spot consistently, unless you just tell them, this is your spot, which I do with my young students, right across from first finger. And sometimes I'll put a little fuzzy piece of tape there, like a moleskin or something like that, where they can find the one. The principle is that we want the thumb to basically be in the same place no matter what finger we're playing. Now, when you get into more advanced repertoire, where we shift the weight balance for vibrato on certain notes or extensions, that's when we can start to pivot that thumb, I think, a little bit more, make it more flexible. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah.
I would be wary of it being too high all the time for the very reason that you just described, which is making sure that they can extend backwards and still keep a nice tall hand position. They can extend backwards if they hold it this way, but keeping it consistent. Unless they have really small hands, that might be okay. Everybody's so different though. You know, the length of the hand here makes a difference. The width of someone's hand. Sometimes people have
How
really
long your
stubby.
fifth finger is, or your fourth finger
how long
compared to
is this
everything
from
else.
here? Yeah, that can make a difference. So it's just looking and saying, does that look healthy? Can they get all four fingers down comfortably with their thumb in that position and keep everything strong and relaxed? And then just kind of use your best judgment, I think.
So I've heard it said that piano starts easy and gets, or let's get that. Piano starts easy and gets hard, and violin starts hard and gets easy.
Yeah, well, sort of.